Clint Eastwood confronted Dean Martin at a 1968 Hollywood party and declared that Dean wasn't a real actor, but just a singer who couldn't act his way out of a paper bag, setting up a challenge that would lead to one of the most unexpected acting duels in Hollywood history, and prove that sometimes the biggest stars are the ones who underestimate the quiet power of natural talent, authentic emotion, and the kind of screen presence that can't be taught in any acting school. It was Saturday evening, March 16, 1968, and the Beverly Hills mansion of producer Hal Wallace was hosting one of Hollywood's most exclusive parties, celebrating the completion of his latest Western film. The guest list included some of the biggest names in the entertainment industry, from established stars to rising newcomers who were reshaping what it meant to be a leading man in American cinema. Dean Martin had arrived at the party in his typical style, relaxed, charming, and seemingly unconcerned about the industry politics and competitive atmosphere that often characterized Hollywood's social gatherings. Dean was at the peak of his career, with successful recording contracts, popular television variety shows, and a string of profitable movies that had made him one of the highest-paid entertainers in the world. Also attending the party was Clint Eastwood, whose career had exploded internationally with his roles in Sergio Leone's Man with No Name trilogy of spaghetti westerns. Eastwood had recently returned to Hollywood from Europe, where he had become a major star, and he was now establishing himself as a serious dramatic actor who could carry major American productions. Eastwood's approach to acting was methodical and intense. He had studied the craft seriously, worked with respected directors, and had developed a screen persona that was based on careful character development and precise control of his on-screen presence. Eastwood took pride in his professionalism and his commitment to the art of acting as a legitimate dramatic discipline. Dean Martin, by contrast, had developed his movie career through a more intuitive approach that relied on his natural charisma, comedic timing, and ability to connect with audiences through seemingly effortless performances. Dean had never attended acting school, rarely discussed technique in interviews, and often gave the impression that acting was just another form of entertainment that came naturally to him. This difference in approach had created some tension in Hollywood circles, where method actors and classically trained performers sometimes looked down on entertainers who had transitioned into movies from other fields, like music or comedy. Dean's casual attitude toward acting technique and his apparent lack of concern about critical recognition had made him a target for actors who believed that dramatic performance required serious training and intensive preparation. The confrontation between Dean and Clint began when they found themselves in the same conversation group near the mansion's bar, where several actors and directors were discussing the changing nature of leading men in American cinema. The conversation had started as a general discussion about the qualities that made actors successful, but it had gradually become more specific as participants began comparing different approaches to screen performance. Clint had been holding forth about the importance of character study, script analysis, and the disciplined approach he believed was necessary for creating believable performances. He had spoken about his experiences working with European directors who demanded precise emotional control and technical proficiency from their leading men. Dean had been listening politely while nursing a drink and occasionally making light comments that demonstrated his relaxed attitude toward the serious discussion of acting technique. Dean's approach to the conversation was typical of his personality: friendly, unpretentious, and more interested in enjoying the party than in debating the finer points of dramatic theory. But Clint apparently interpreted Dean's casual attitude as disrespect for the acting profession and a lack of seriousness about the craft that Clint took very seriously. The tension had been building throughout their conversation as Clint became increasingly frustrated with Dean's apparent indifference to the technical aspects of performance. The breaking point came when someone in the group mentioned Dean's upcoming role in a dramatic Western that would require him to play a more serious character than his typical light comedy parts. Dean had mentioned that he was looking forward to the challenge, but wasn't particularly worried about the dramatic demands of the role. Clint's response was direct and insulting. "Dean, with all due respect, you're not really an actor," Clint said with the blunt honesty that would later become his trademark as a director. "You're a singer and entertainer who happens to appear in movies, but you've never demonstrated that you can actually act. You just play variations of yourself, and that's not real acting." The conversation group fell silent as everyone realized that Clint had crossed a line from professional discussion into personal attack. Dean's expression remained calm, but his friends could see that Clint's words had stung more than Dean was willing to show publicly. Dean's response was measured and diplomatic, reflecting his preference for avoiding confrontation even when he was being insulted. "Clint, I respect your approach to acting, and I understand that you take the craft very seriously," Dean said. "I've never claimed to be a method actor or a classically trained performer. I just try to bring something honest to each role I play." But Clint wasn't finished making his point. "That's exactly what I mean," Clint continued. "Real acting isn't about being honest or natural. It's about creating characters that are completely different from yourself, about disappearing into roles so completely that audiences forget they're watching Clint Eastwood or Dean Martin. You've never done that. Every character you play is just Dean Martin in different clothes." The personal nature of Clint's criticism had attracted the attention of other party guests, and a crowd was beginning to gather around their conversation. Dean realized that he was being challenged publicly and that his response would be observed and discussed throughout Hollywood within days. Dean's friends expected him to either deflect the challenge with humor or walk away to avoid escalating the confrontation. But Dean surprised everyone by accepting Clint's implicit challenge directly. "Clint, you seem very confident about what real acting looks like," Dean said with quiet authority. "Maybe we should test your theory. I'll make you a bet." The crowd around them grew larger as people realized they were witnessing an unprecedented confrontation between two major stars with completely different approaches to their craft. "What kind of bet?" Clint asked, clearly intrigued by Dean's unexpected willingness to defend his acting abilities. Dean's proposal would become one of the most talked-about challenges in Hollywood history. "Let's both audition for the same role," Dean said. "A dramatic part that neither of us has seen before, with a director who doesn't know either of us personally. We'll both prepare the same scene, perform it for the same audience, and let neutral judges decide who gives the better performance." The audacity of Dean's challenge stunned everyone at the party. No established stars of their caliber had ever agreed to audition competitively for the same role, especially not in front of industry witnesses who would inevitably publicize the results. Clint was clearly surprised by Dean's confidence, but his pride and his certainty about his own superior acting abilities made it impossible for him to back down from the challenge. "You're serious about this?" Clint asked. "Completely serious," Dean replied, "unless you're not as confident about your acting as you seem to be." Clint agreed to the challenge, and the details were worked out within the next hour with the help of several directors and producers who were at the party. The test would take place the following week at a neutral studio, with a scene from a dramatic play that neither actor had performed before. The scene chosen was a monologue from Tennessee Williams's Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, requiring the actor to portray a man confronting painful truths about his marriage, his family, and his own failures. The role demanded emotional vulnerability, psychological complexity, and the ability to convey deep internal conflict through dialogue and physical presence. The judges would be three respected directors who had worked with both comedic and dramatic performers, and who could evaluate the performances based purely on technical skill and emotional authenticity, rather than personal relationships or industry politics. Word of the Dean Martin Clint Eastwood acting challenge spread throughout Hollywood within days, generating excitement and speculation about the outcome. Industry insiders debated the wisdom of Dean's decision to challenge someone with Clint's reputation for serious dramatic work. while others wondered whether Clint might have underestimated Dean's abilities. The week between the challenge and the audition gave both actors time to prepare their performances, but their approaches to preparation revealed the fundamental differences in their acting philosophies that had led to the confrontation. Clint approached the scene with his typical methodical intensity, spending hours analyzing the text, developing detailed backstory for his character, and rehearsing different interpretations of key moments. Clint worked with an acting coach, studied recordings of other actors performing Tennessee Williams, and created elaborate psychological profiles for his character's motivations and history. Dean, by contrast, took a more intuitive approach to preparation. He read the scene multiple times to understand the emotional core of the character's situation, but he didn't engage in extensive analytical work or formal coaching. Dean preferred to let his natural instincts guide his interpretation, trusting that his life experiences and emotional intelligence would allow him to find authentic moments within the dramatic material. The day of the audition arrived with unusual fanfare for what was essentially a private performance. The studio where the test would take place had been reserved for the entire afternoon, and security was tight to prevent unwanted publicity or interference. The audience consisted of the 3 director judges, several witnesses from the original party, and a few additional industry figures who had been invited to observe the unprecedented event. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation, as everyone understood they were witnessing something unique in Hollywood history. Clint performed first, delivering a technically proficient and emotionally controlled interpretation of the Tennessee Williams monologue. His performance demonstrated his acting training and his ability to create a psychologically complex character through careful attention to vocal technique, physical staging, and emotional pacing. Clint's interpretation was intellectually impressive and showed clear evidence of his analytical approach to character development. He had made specific choices about his character's emotional state, physical condition, and psychological motivations, and he executed those choices with precision and consistency. The judges and audience recognized that Clint had delivered exactly the kind of serious, technically accomplished performance that had made him a respected dramatic actor. His work on the scene was professional, controlled, and demonstrated the methodical approach to acting that he had been advocating during the confrontation with Dean. Then, Dean performed the same monologue. Dean's approach to the scene was completely different from Clint's methodical interpretation. Instead of demonstrating technical precision and analytical character work, Dean brought an emotional authenticity and natural vulnerability to the material that transformed the words from a dramatic exercise into a genuine human confession. Dean didn't appear to be acting at all. He seemed to be living the character's pain, confusion, and desperate need for connection in real time, as if he were discovering the emotions for the first time, rather than performing them according to a predetermined plan. The most striking aspect of Dean's performance was his ability to find universal human experiences within the specific dramatic situation. While Clint had created a character, Dean had found himself within the character, allowing his own experiences with loss, disappointment, and the struggle to maintain dignity during difficult times to inform his interpretation of the material. Dean's performance was less technically precise than Clint's, but it was more emotionally affecting. His natural charisma and genuine warmth made the character's pain feel immediate and real, while his instinctive understanding of timing and emotional pacing created moments of surprising power and beauty. When Dean finished his performance, the studio was silent for several long seconds as the judges and audience processed what they had witnessed. It was clear that Dean had delivered something unexpected and powerful, but it was equally clear that his approach to the material was completely different from conventional dramatic technique. The judges deliberated privately for 30 minutes before announcing their decision. The verdict was unanimous. Dean Martin had given the superior performance. The judges explained that while Clint's technical skills and analytical approach were impressive, Dean's natural emotional connection to the material had created a more compelling and believable character. Dean's performance had felt authentic in a way that transcended technique, demonstrating that genuine screen presence and emotional honesty could be more powerful than formal training. The results of the acting challenge sent shockwaves through Hollywood and forced a reconsideration of assumptions about what constituted legitimate dramatic performance. Dean's victory proved that natural talent and authentic emotional connection could compete with formal training and methodical technique. Clint, to his credit, accepted the judge's decision graciously and publicly acknowledged that he had underestimated Dean's abilities as a performer. In later interviews, Clint admitted that the experience had taught him valuable lessons about the different paths to effective acting and the importance of emotional authenticity in dramatic performance. "Dean taught me that there's more than one way to create a compelling character," Clint said in a 1970 interview. "His approach is different from mine, but it's just as valid. He has instincts that can't be taught, and that's a form of talent that deserves respect." Dean, for his part, used the victory to demonstrate his characteristic graciousness and professionalism. He downplayed the competitive aspect of the challenge and emphasized his respect for Clint's dedication to the craft of acting. "Clint is a serious actor who brings discipline and intelligence to every role he plays," Dean said when asked about the challenge. "We just have different approaches to the same goal, which is creating characters that audiences can believe in and care about." The Dean Martin Clint Eastwood acting challenge became legendary in Hollywood circles, but its real significance lay in what it revealed about the nature of screen presence and dramatic authenticity. The event demonstrated that effective acting could emerge from natural talent and emotional intelligence, as well as from formal training and analytical technique. The immediate aftermath of the challenge created ripple effects throughout the entertainment industry that would influence casting decisions and the way Hollywood evaluated dramatic talent for years to come. Several major studios reached out to Dean within days, offering him dramatic parts that would have been unimaginable before his victory. The challenge also established Dean Martin's credibility as a serious performer, in addition to his reputation as an entertainer and comedian. Directors began offering Dean more dramatic roles, recognizing that his natural abilities could be applied to complex characters that required emotional depth and psychological authenticity. Clint Eastwood went on to become one of Hollywood's most successful actors and directors, but the experience with Dean influenced his approach to working with performers who brought different styles and backgrounds to their roles. Clint became known for his ability to recognize and utilize the natural talents of actors who might not fit conventional molds. The challenge also had significant impact on acting education and the way dramatic performance was taught in professional training programs. Several acting schools began incorporating discussions of Dean's approach into their curricula, recognizing that natural talent and emotional authenticity were valid alternatives to method acting and classical technique. The story of their confrontation and challenge became part of Hollywood folklore, illustrating the ongoing tension between different approaches to dramatic performance and the importance of recognizing that authentic screen presence can take many forms. Years later, both men reflected on the incident as a valuable learning experience that had enhanced their understanding of acting and their respect for different approaches to dramatic performance. Their brief conflict had evolved into mutual respect and occasional collaboration on projects that benefited from their different but complementary strengths. Dean often spoke positively about Clint in interviews throughout the 1970s and 1980s, praising his evolution as both an actor and director while maintaining his characteristic humility about his own abilities. "Clint challenged me to prove something I wasn't even sure I could prove," Dean said in a 1975 interview. "He made me a better performer by forcing me to reach deeper than I had ever reached before. I'm grateful for that challenge, even though it was uncomfortable at the time." The legacy of the Dean Martin-Clint Eastwood acting challenge extended beyond their individual careers to influence how Hollywood approached the relationship between different entertainment disciplines and dramatic performance. The entertainment industry began recognizing that singers, comedians, and other performers could bring valuable perspectives and skills to dramatic roles. This broader acceptance of diverse backgrounds in dramatic casting would eventually lead to breakthrough performances by comedians like Robin Williams in dramatic roles, musicians like Will Smith in action films, and other cross-genre successes that might not have been possible without the precedent established by Dean's victory over Clint. The challenge also demonstrated the importance of taking risks and defending your artistic integrity, even when facing criticism from respected peers. Dean's willingness to accept Clint's challenge rather than avoiding confrontation had ultimately enhanced his career and expanded opportunities for other performers with unconventional backgrounds. Entertainment historians later identified the Dean Martin-Clint Eastwood challenge as a turning point in American acting culture, marking the beginning of a more inclusive approach to dramatic performance that valued authenticity over formal training. The incident became a case study in film schools and acting programs as an example of how natural talent could compete with methodical technique. The Tennessee Williams monologue that both actors performed became one of the most studied dramatic scenes in American theater education, with instructors using video recordings of both performances to demonstrate different approaches to the same material. Students learned that effective acting could emerge from emotional honesty as well as analytical character development. Casting directors who witnessed the original challenge began actively seeking performers from non-traditional backgrounds, understanding that diversity of approach could enhance the authenticity and emotional impact of dramatic projects. This shift in casting philosophy would influence American cinema for decades, leading to more nuanced and emotionally complex performances across all genres. The challenge also highlighted the importance of emotional vulnerability in male performance, challenging traditional notions of masculine screen presence that emphasize stoicism and emotional control. Dean's willingness to expose his feelings and connect with the pain in the Tennessee Williams character demonstrated that male actors could be both strong and sensitive without compromising their appeal to audiences. Most significantly, the story illustrated that artistic truth could emerge from many different sources, and that the most powerful performances often came from actors who brought their authentic selves to their roles, rather than disappearing completely into characters created through technical analysis. The challenge proved that genuine screen presence was ultimately more valuable than perfect technique in creating memorable and authentic dramatic performances that resonated with audiences. If this story of artistic challenge and unexpected triumph moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with anyone who needs to know that talent comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most authentic performances come from actors who trust their instincts rather than relying solely on formal technique. Have you ever been underestimated because of your unconventional approach to something? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible stories about the moments when natural talent proves itself against all expectations and conventional wisdom.